for joining us for our Chamber Connection podcast. Thanks to our friends at Speakeasy, we are here for the next 52 weeks, bringing you guests from around our community, elected officials, business owners, folks doing great work here in Macomb County. So, sit back, take a listen, and we hope you'll join us every week for our Chamber Connection. Thanks for joining us for this week's Chamber Connection. I'm Stacy Ziarko, President and CEO of the Sterling Heights Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're happy that you tuned in today, and my guest today is a lot of fun. It's an organization that is near and dear to my heart, Care of Southeastern Michigan, and their CEO, Susan Styf. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm really excited to be able to do this with you.
I have been working with Care for many, many years at this point, and the great work that you do. Susan, tell us about yourself and tell us about Care.
Sure. So I'm a social worker, licensed master social worker with a credentials in substance use and supervising clinicians, and as well as EAP. I've been doing this for a very long time, over 30 years. So I came to Care in 2016, worked with Monique Stanton, who I know is one of your very good friends.
Very, very good friends.
Yes. And in July of 2020, Monique had moved out of state, and I was fortunate enough to be selected by the board to become the CEO. So it's been an interesting 2 years, as we were talking right before we started the podcast.
What a pandemic. What are some of the services that Care provides to our community? We're here, we could be here all day and probably not touch on all of them.
Yeah, we always talk about how difficult it is to create that elevator speech on what we do, because it's very broad and important. We focus on substance use disorders through prevention programming, which is really those services for the community or the life skills that we do in the schools for Macomb County. We have a large peer recovery coaching program that is functioning out of our brand new Recovery United Community Center, which is a great building that, have you been there yet?
I have. I came to, there was a party, a ribbon cutting. I was there.
We didn't have the ribbon cutting.
No.
That was in...
no, it was Monique's party.
Yes, that's correct. I was going to say, because our ribbon cutting was scheduled for March 16th, 2020.
I do remember that. Now I remember that.
Yeah, so we do a lot of really unique recovery support services out of that building, which are very, very important for people in recovery to do more than just talk therapy, and that's really what it touches upon. We do family services. We've been known for our parenting classes, case management to really help parents become engaged with their children and meet all the needs that they may have that we need to address. Our employee assistance program, which I'm very passionate about, and we do a lot of really good work with the municipalities and other nonprofits as well as schools in the area. And then our student assistance program, which supports all of the Macomb County schools with the kids that need a behavioral health or a substance use assessment.
Well, you've had a busy 2 years after taking the reins. What have you seen in what has the pandemic shown you about what is happening in our community?
Well, how important it is to stay connected to other people. When we talk about substance use, there's a lot of approaches to work with people, but in general, what we find is that when people have connections to other people, that is really one of the number one things that helps people recover. So it's been exceptionally difficult with people being isolated, which I think goes into the increase in relapse as well as overdose. I would be remiss to not say fentanyl is a big part of that as well. But we've seen some challenges at really making sure we're connected with people and we're able to get out of the house. And we've also seen an increased needs in behavioral health services for our youth.
So what are you seeing in the schools? What are their needs that they're reaching out to you for now?
Yeah.
Because we were talking, some kids have been out of school for 2 years.
Yeah, it's been very difficult. I think we're in the place now where people are starting to come back together, where we're starting to see what the impact of that was. I think there's an increase in depression. I think kids have a lot more anxiety. We are seeing a lot more expression and thoughts of violence, which I think, not to bring down the podcast too much, but that is something that's very important that we're seeing what happened in Oxford versus how that's manifesting with the kids in Macomb County as well. And the teachers. I mean, the teachers are also really exhausted, and we're out on site talking to them. Every thing that, and before when you'd have that resiliency to really work through what was going on, I think people's resources are just really at the end of the rope and they really need some extra help.
So for those listening, like some of their kids have been out of school for 2 years. They're noticing some behavioral challenges. We're getting close to the end of a school year. What can parents do? What are some resources that are out there that you can provide?
So we can help with an assessment that can go through everything that your child is feeling, and then we can meet with you and really talk about it. Often when kids start to do things or act out, or they're not really sure how to express how they're feeling, as adults, we want to correct it and we want to punish it. I think it seems a little counterintuitive, but kids have had so much loss over the past couple of years and have had so much pulled away from them that what's really important now is we find a way to support re-engaging in activities and finding ways to support kids. That in the past, maybe what we would do instead is give them a timeout to bring them in. I think we have to start looking at it different and wrapping around kids and making sure that they're getting out and socializing and doing things.
So summer's coming.
Mm-hmm.
What can families do, now that, we've kind of been out of our routines, we've been kind of doing things differently. What can we do so that when we get back to school in the fall, kids are prepared, families are ready, and teachers are refreshed?
So
it's a lot.
It is. I think that when we talk about brain development in kids, we talk about the amount of time they spend on electronics and what that typically does to their brain. So when you think about having brain development, you want to increase every single pathway that you can. And the more routine you are in things, you just keep reusing those same pathways. In the past, we did not spend all this time online or on virtual platforms. And I think kids have really lost that ability to stimulate the other parts of their brain. So what would I recommend and what we're going to do with our own kids is get them outside, get them learning something new. That's if your child hasn't done something, try to challenge them to do something new. Pick up an instrument, do a new sport, maybe if they haven't really tried that before, to really engage in that. Do something as a family activity that just go to the park and explore something new, try something new. That's what's really going to sort of restart all of our brain and the activity that we have.
So I love one of the things that came out of the pandemic, even for somebody was like me as an adult, was all of the ways people was sharing their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a charcuterie board making class, a calligraphy class, random things. There's projects like that for adults and kids to kind of get us back in the groove.
I know. I want to take a glass blowing class.
See,
That's what we talked about.
I know a place.
Yep. I think that goes, and do it together.
Right.
So that's the other thing too, is in the past we used to go our own different ways and everybody run around. I do think we need to reconnect. People are working remote. People haven't met their new team members that maybe they onboarded during the pandemic. It is super family connections, personal connections is what's really going to build resiliency back, because that's what's really taken a toll, is our ability to be resilient.
So speaking of that, we've all heard on the news over the last couple of years the increased substance abuse use in our communities. What is CARE doing? What is CARE going to continue to do? And then what can we all do to help each other?
So our Recovery Community Center is offering a variety of programs, whether it's just recovery groups or yoga, which is open for the entire community.
Fantastic.
There's no charge for it. Art. So we have a collaboration with the Detroit Institute of Arts to find that expression. It's looking at it more than just coming in for treatment. It is that broad spectrum of how we connect with people and continue to move forward. If you know somebody that you see is going down a bad path and you want to work with them, family members can reach out too. This isn't just for the person. It could be a friend. It could be your neighbor. We have people who come in and they'll say things like, my daughter's boyfriend isn't doing so well. What can I do? And we'll coach along that. The number one thing I always say is go with your gut. I think we have an inclination to minimize when we see something that we're not comfortable with. And what I would say is to really fight substance use. It's don't be shy to be concerned about if you see somebody else going down that path.
So this impacts the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not just the person that is using, but this does impact the children, parents, maybe it's grandchildren. What are some services that you and CARE provide for the whole family?
So March is our annual parenting conference, and we do that the first Saturday of March for Parenting Awareness Month. It is one of my favorite events. Obviously, we just had it. We're looking forward to being in person again. We've done it
Yay.
virtually the past 2 years. Yes, we get a lot of community feedback that they miss it as well. As we go into the summer, we do our summer camps for kids.
Oh, those are my favorite.
Those are.
I loved watching. I love those kids when they come.
Yeah, they do a lot of really cool activities. We even have artwork around our building on projects that they've done during that time. But if kids are coming from a family or have had exposure to substance use, this is a great time. We're working on life skills, again, building that resiliency, that strength to really minimize risk factors that kids could have in their life. And then obviously our Student Assistance Center is available. We work with all the Macomb County schools. That shouldn't be a problem to access any services that way.
So you talk about the Employee Assistance Program and EAPs being kind of near and dear to your heart and a passion project for you. Um, you know, we talked at one point, Susan, about you being an empathetic employer, right? And how do we realize that our employees aren't the same that they left 2 years ago? If you're someone like me, I have a completely new team than when we left in March of 2020. So it's also what does having an EAP program and being an employer that offers these services, how does that help our teammates and our team members?
Well, employee assistance programs are designed to increase workplace productivity, to support the company, as well as supporting the employees with what they may have going on. So you have an employee that has maybe an elderly parent and a child, and they're sort of in that sandwich generation, and they're trying to figure out how to find resources. The Employee Assistance Program will help them with that. We've come in, we've done some diversity and inclusion training. We'll do how to speak to each other politely in the workplace. You can imagine that everybody's maybe a little bit raw these days, and we've had companies that have said, this is a great long-term employee, but they're just really not at their best, and we'll come in and we'll help, and we'll refocus maybe what the objective is or what's going on, or help bridge that communication. A lot of our work has been with the first responders in all of the communities. As you can imagine, it never really stopped for them. They didn't get time to go home and binge watch Netflix. I mean, they were really seeing the worst of it. So we've been doing a lot of work to support them too, and really the experience that they've gone through to make sure that they have strong resiliency too.
And I actually sat through your de-escalation training before too, with some of your teammates, and dealing with others in this environment. Like you said, we're all kind of at that short fuse. Like, right? We've been through a lot. We haven't been really talking about it because I think we all said you just kept your head down and you kept going. But it impacted all of us in some ways.
It did. I think a lot of people initially approached everything with it was temporary, we'll get through it, and then all of a sudden we're a year into it, we're like, oh, okay, well now it's gone away. Oh, wait, no it hasn't. And I think that a lot of employers have had to adjust and accept, okay, so if we knew that this was going to be permanent, what would we do different? And you're starting to see a lot of companies come out on the other side of that and recognize who can work from home, who can't. I think it did challenge and bring to light the generational differences too about how people want to be in the workplace. We definitely have had interviews where the first question the candidate says is, how much can I work from home? And you have to really evaluate, are we being stubborn? Do we need to adjust? What's going to meet the needs of the employee as well as the community?
I realized I am not a good work from home person. I was grateful that I could do it when I had to. I hated working from home.
Me too.
I'm a very social person, and this was really hard for me to sit in a small, heatless office at home for months on end. It was just not my thing.
Well, because you and I are both in the business
Right.
of serving people and connecting people and ensuring that that social aspect of life in the workplace is supported. So it's really difficult to do that from home. I mean, I had to hire our chief financial officer on Zoom. That was so difficult for such a key position.
Absolutely.
And I talked to one of my friends about it. And I was like, I don't know if I should do this. And she goes, okay, what are you afraid of? That he's going to wear socks with sandals? Like, you just haven't seen his feet. Like, just
do it.
Just do it. And so a lot of that fear of moving from those traditional ways has had to change. And, it's worked out well.
I wish I had talked to your friend, because I also had to hire a finance person via Zoom during the pandemic. And I got frozen in that position, because it was like, I am going to give this person that I don't know, I've never met in person, all of our account access and all of this. And I ended up contracting someone that had worked for us in the past for a few months, and then hiring the person kind of in the spring of 2021, because I was in that nervous boat where you were too.
Yeah, I was too. I met him in person for the first time when he showed up for work. It's just like, nice to meet you. He was
welcome to the team.
Yeah, he was a good sport about it.
Did he show up in socks and sandals on his first day?
No, he was completely dressed appropriately. It worked out just fine, and he enjoyed being in the office too. So that was a shifting point for us in deciding who needed to be in the office, who could still work remotely. And it really helped define our culture. I tell the story as kind of a joke, but it really was a significant moment for our decision on moving forward.
Do you feel that you are building some muscle back in kind of socializing and getting out there, that it's taken a little longer than you thought it would?
Well, I have very much appreciated the chamber events, I'll be honest, because it's allowed me to really get in front of people and introduce myself and really start to make those connections again, too. So, we talked a little bit that we sort of lost time for a couple of years. It's sort of weird. Now, fortunately, I knew enough people that I could walk into an event and not have to sit at a table by myself.
I would never let you.
I know.
I would never let you do that.
But, that's really where we're at. A lot of people did change jobs, and now they're sort of emerging in different roles.
I had a conversation. We were together at an event a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to another attendee that day, and she said, I didn't know what to wear. It was the first time I'd gotten dressed. I wore heels. I don't even know if I can walk in heels anymore. She's like, I drove with another pair of shoes. It's like all of those kind of social norms that we had on March 13th of 2020, all the things that we knew went away.
Yep. And then the discussion on is who's comfortable with masks, where are we at with that? And it's all manners and politeness about how we interact with each other too. Is, we need to re-engage in that a little bit more, because everybody's in a different place. And manners are about making other people feel comfortable. And so trying to create this space where there's so much external stuff going on that everybody can feel comfortable and we can be gracious is so important.
And everybody's comfort levels are going to be different for, different reasons. Mm-hmm. I have a friend whose daughter has special needs, can't get vaccinated yet. So they're very careful about what they do, because no one wants to get, this little 4-year-old sick. And I think we all have to show people some grace and be mindful of those things too.
I agree. It really is about the courtesy that we extend to other people. We sometimes have to get out of our own head about what we think and really look at the idea of helping other people feel comfortable in a situation.
So I've been on the sidelines watching care grow exponentially over the last 10 years. It's astounding. But I think that shows the needs that are there too, right? When you started as an organization of 25 and 50, and how many employees do you have now?
We have 85 full-time employees now, with probably about another 20 that fall into part-time or even casual level.
So that shows the need, right? That your organization is growing to meet the needs of our community. So, what can we all do to support you? What can, us as our listeners and members of our community be there to help those in need that you work with?
Well, we'd love people to volunteer and help us with any of our events that we have going on, promoting any of the services that we have, probably more than anything else. Substance use affects everybody, and it's often a topic that people don't really want to talk about or admit. It becomes embarrassing. People like to present a certain way. There's still a lot of stigma associated with it. But reducing that stigma and getting involved and realizing that diving into it and is really in developing those connections is the way that we combat it. And our peer recovery coaches that work in the hospitals.
I was thinking of.
Yeah, they started in the hospital, and it was one of those things when they start at the hospital staff isn't really sure how this is going to go. The peer recovery coaches aren't sure how they're going to be received. And then we look at it 5 years later, and the coaches have these tremendous stories of nurses and physicians coming up to them and asking for advice. Or my favorite is when somebody finally tells maybe their history of their substance use and somebody's shocked and they look at them and they say, "You? Really?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that was my story." And it really helps remove that stigma that recovery is important. But that's what we talked about before we started filming, is the experience is really what we need to do. We're not going to think our way out of this. We're not going to feel our way. We have to act, and we have to behave in a way to really get to know each other and understand that it's just people. And
and I think when you talk about folks in recovery, folks using different substances, it can be anyone. It can be your next door neighbor. It could be a family member. And some people, have just, you don't know them maybe when they're not using. And so can you talk a little bit about that, just the impact that this has on all of us?
So with everything, we always think of the most extreme example when it comes to substance use. We don't think about the person that is working a job full time, still gets their kids to where they need to go, but maybe is drinking too much. We've spent a lot of time talking about opiates, but alcohol is still
Absolutely.
really the number one substance use concern. And throughout, by far, it's not even close on the numbers. People just don't feel good. If you're drinking more than what would be reasonable, you're physically not going to feel well. You're over time going to have health conditions that impact it. And it is just as important to reach out and to try to help that person than what that most extreme example we see in the movies of somebody who is using opiates or heroin. So it is important to pay attention to that. Is that person just not getting where they need to go? Are they disengaged in life? Think about blood pressure, for example, excessive alcohol use and how it affects your blood pressure. Yeah. And it may present as a blood pressure issue, but it's not. It's still the alcohol use. And so all of that is the way to approach and to look at your community and how you can help somebody.
So you have great stories of hope and of people whose lives that you've touched. I've heard them. I've seen them at your events. Can you tell us one that sticks out with you?
Well, we have a peer recovery coach that used to work for us that's now an attorney. So Tony had presented at one of our events. He's a great ambassador for our services as well as for recovery. And he will tell stories about his descent into substance use and his fight to get clean. And he is now graduating law school. I mean, it's just really a testament to having the right supports and really helping somebody work a program effectively and refocus their life and where they can go.
And then Tony came back and helped others.
Yeah, very much so.
See, and I think that's, where we can all kind of lend our hand. And if it's not a hand, it's a voice. And sometimes it's just making sure information gets into the hands of the right people.
It is. It's never giving up on people. And it really comes back to that courtesy of how we treat other people. One of my favorite quotes is from Bruce Perry, who's really the informed person he's the trauma-informed guru around. And he'll say people would never choose to live their life that way. Why would you choose to live your life in such turmoil? And it really comes down to what is the filter, what's happening on how it's preventing people from living their best life. And we don't think about that. We always want to judge people for the decisions they made, but their life is not in a good place. They need help.
And I think, your services became so much more vital, almost more than anything else that we had during the pandemic, was that people needed to know that there were resources out there and that you were there to help them. And you did remarkably, whether it was virtual, whether it was in person, whether it was on a phone, care was still there to support the needs of those that needed you.
Yeah, we found a way to still stay in the office for the most part. We really took a deep dive and almost identified person by person on which positions needed to be in the office, which ones could be virtual. We started holding staff meetings outside because we knew how important it was for us to still
Sure.
connect if we were still going to be able to be that strength for the community to connect. It's been challenging and difficult, but I agree. It was this. I'm so proud of the team and the services that they delivered and how difficult it was for them. And the positive of that is we had all these strict requirements about how services had to be delivered, and everybody was forced to rethink that. And we've had some programs that have excelled
That's fantastic.
virtually, which is our parenting classes. We always wanted to start doing the parenting classes on a virtual platform, and we found tremendous engagement once we went virtual instead of that traditional in-person sitting in a classroom. So there's some positive things that really came out of supporting the community as well. And let's face it, everybody becoming virtual and learning that competency was a good thing.
We taught my 90-year-old grandmother to Zoom. We saw a lot of her forehead, but we at least saw something.
Yeah, exactly. And that would have been something that nobody would have engaged in before.
No.
So there's some good things that came out of this as far as development in that regard. Now, I think we're all ready to put it in a place where it's not overused.
It has some use.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it does. It's helped, but I agree, being in person. But yeah, so our services stayed open the entire time. We didn't lay off
You were
anybody.
essential. You became even more essential than you were before.
I think we're essential, but I'm not going to put it in first responder category.
Absolutely.
I'm a little sensitive to that for them.
Well, I am grateful for the work that Care of Southeastern Michigan does, that they're here, they're in our community, there are resources for everyone. And thank you, Susan, for being here this morning. Thank you for tuning in. I think this is such an important topic that we just, need to keep this conversation going and engaging with those in need. So thank you for being here. We'll certainly bring you back in a follow-up. We can talk about all the cool stuff that Care has going on later on this year.
Okay, good.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we look forward to talking with you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Chamber Connection. Be sure to check out information on the Sterling Heights Regional Chamber of Commerce website, our Facebook page, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We look forward to you connecting with us and tuning in next time.